Hey, peace, everybody. I'm doing the show later on tonight at 7 with Dr. Jarrett Ball. But the last couple of days, I've gotten very little sleep due to a lot of hate and just ridiculousness and lazy arguments and ignorant and uneducated people around not just the play Hamilton, but around the politics of the play and Lin-Manuel Miranda. So I decided to do like a little maybe 20 to 30-minute thing today to really go deep into it, because after this, I'm going to be working with a dope bunch of people to bring more demands, not only to Lin, but the Hispanic Federation, and particularly, mad Puerto Ricans and a lot of other Latinos, including Afro ones, that are truly selling our people out right now. They're selling out Puerto Rico literally. They're selling out our movement, and they're doing it for visibility and leadership. And usually I would address this anyway. Everybody who knows me knows I would. But when I start getting comments about people coming to look for me, posting my address, threatening me, calling me a bitch, a cunt, I need some dick, I should be fucked up over a play that is fictional about someone who trafficked in Black bodies, many of those same people, and not just men, but a lot of women, right, are the same people that are on the streets talking about Black Lives Matter. So I want to start with the fact that an argument that people are having about Hamilton is like, well, at least the play was all people of color. And for sure, Broadway has been white. But there is no time in American cultural or political landscape where we have not created opportunities for ourselves. So before there was a Lin-Manuel Miranda, there was an August Wilson and a Mary Baraka. There are people like Denzel Washington who started their career just doing Black plays. There was a theater that used to be called the National Black Slave Theater that put on plays. Puerto Ricans have been doing it. We've been creating our own art and making opportunities for ourselves way before Broadway came and way before Hollywood is coming now. And if in 2020, someone like Steven Spielberg thinks that he is going to be able to release a movie at the end of this year on a remake of the most racist play ever about Puerto Ricans, West Side Story, and we're letting Hamilton pass, then we might as well let that bullshit pass too. So sorry for everybody on Instagram. I'm about to turn the camera around and be with y'all. But I want to start with showing you what, for me, Black culture, hip hop, Latino hip hop, politics means to me. And I don't even want to hear anybody say we can't do it, because with all the technology we have, we can do exactly the video and the song I'm about to show you, and then just get a little bit into Hamilton, who traded in Black bodies and slavery, and give some people some specific Puerto Rican resources that they could use and really strengthen that argument. And lastly, for all the sisters out there who've been hitting me up telling me when they see what people are saying about me, right? That's why they don't speak out. That's the fucking problem. It's not that you're making comments about me. I can take that. I got comrades. I know how to defend myself. But when 17 and 18-year-old girls who look up to me, when brothers who look up to me, when non-gender conforming trans people look up to me, and they're like, this is why I don't speak out, then it makes me even go in harder and speak out. And really, you can hide behind a keyboard, but if you want to come on live with me and try to debate me about this, we can also do that. Sorry, I hope everybody heard. Now, I'm gonna play the video and then finish up. Let's make sure I do this right. Okay. Oh, of course. Oh, sorry about that, y'all. They go like this, bitch. You decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Like this, bitch. You decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. You ain't never come around at my casa. I know, but you don't know the pain of my casa. Just in a big picture. I'm the man with the paint and the pickup. I'm the one with paletas de agua, de piña, de coco, de mango, de guava. You don't wanna mess around with my squad. The rebel, we all out loud. I came up with a couple of guys who always kept a 9 in the glove of the Dodge. Korean in the right hand and left middle finger for them jump out. When they were back on the squad, sing like a John Jackson, war faction, hold the world hostage. With the camera with the pot, that's how you know I'm hostage. If they ain't no seeing in them, boys will double cross you. But they gon' bring us out at midnight off a mark. They go like this, bitch, you decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. This bitch, you decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. In my experience, only the other shooters can properly transition to lead the course. Shooters shooting along with them, getting arrested with them. And if it come down to dying, you dying along with them. I know, homie, but I would never follow you to battle if you never seen a armor lion like action. And you can never tell me what that neighborhood in need of. If you ain't never lived inside the neighborhood you speak of, we gon' like this bitch, you decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. This bitch, you decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. It's fuck the police with my every breath. Conscious rappers living life like fairy tales. I grow close to the devil jail with every step. I sold a piece of my soul with every piece I sold. From ET rolling through some people roll. These ain't sources of trouble to make sin of slow. Cause I got work falling off just like my hickory. Hickory, fuck America, this is history. Killers in the headline. The revolutionary, you never get fair time. Calling a shot but you wouldn't kill a fruit fly. Real life pre-occupation so I can prove mine. Jesus was in Chicago, he probably gangbang. AK, live like CT Flex to maintain. The shooters, same motherfucking single mothers living next door to the range. Motherfucker, I don't like this bitch, decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. This bitch, decide your future. The leaders, are the shooters. They on West flourishing, is flourishing. Revolution in the air, they Ferguson. Unnamed shooters on the front line, serving them. Police have to retreat these streets from them. Time passes, what came from the ashes. In the aftermath, who paid, who casting. I don't see those faces that was masked in the actions. Karma always blacking, let's get it cracking. One time for the Angela Davis. 2 times horse out of Shakur. Exercising my rights to carry, bitch. What you think all the guns is for? Rather go out standing 10 down my knees. I'ma shoot a motherfucker that ain't crying. Peace, shaking off freedom. Go back on the front line. Try to wake that ass up. This is the punch time. They go like this, bitch. Decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Are the leaders, are the shooters. This bitch, decide your future. Are the leaders, are the shooters. Yeah, so I wanted to start with that. Look, for me, that represents the art that is being created right now. And the reason I titled this is Lin-Manuel Paint Your Rent is because the amount of comments, I would think that like mad people were on like his payroll right now, and it's ridiculous. And honestly, if he wants to have a debate, let's have a debate. He ain't gonna have a debate with us. He's not gonna have debate with Puerto Rican activists and organizers, because him and his dad and the Hispanic Federation and the Latino Victory Fund are selling us out and about to continue to sell out Puerto Ricans. I just wanted to start real quick with this article from Ishmael Reed and then just drop a couple of books and then get ready for tonight's show with Dr. Jared Ball at 7 p.m., where we're going to talk about the myth of and propaganda of Black buying power. Because in the time that we're in, and all this money flowing in from capitalist corporations to man nonprofits, we are still have no economic resources. COVID is disproportionately killing us. This president and his cabinet wants, you know why they want public school back open? Because most people in public school are Black and brown kids and poor white kids. And if they're not in school, then their parents can't go work. For people like Trump and them, their parents can't go work and make non-livable wages in unsafe conditions. Their parents can't go back to Amazon or UPS or all these places that are straight raping people economically, colonizing them mentally, causing mental health. Companies are making trillions of dollars and they don't want to pay Black or brown workers or poor white workers or workers, period, a livable wage. But particularly for Black people, Amazon doesn't want to pay a livable wage nor provide health care, but they want to be tweeting about Black Lives Matter. They don't want to sell Washington Redskins gear, which is right. They shouldn't be selling that shit. They shouldn't be selling a Confederate flag. But yet, them same poor white people that working at Walmart that's no longer going to sell the Confederate flag that they cling to, which is politically just wrong. But the reality is, is my audio not working? Can people hear me? My mom just says she can't hear me. People can hear me, right? That would be terrible if people couldn't hear me. Can somebody just let me know if y'all can hear me? Anybody? Can you let me know? Okay. The Twitter audio style. Oh, that's all right. Periscope. But okay, cool. All right. Mommy, unmute me if you're trying to listen to me. So what I was saying is we're in this time of Black Lives Matter and this disproportionate effect of COVID and this crazy president. And then our only choice is Joe Biden, who already said he's going to increase military funding. He's going to send more money to Israel. He doesn't want health care for all or Medicare for all. He thinks there should be limits put on immigration. He's not sure what he's going to do about kids that are still in cages, and he wants to fund the police even more. So that's the choices we have, right? So in these times, it's usually culture and music that get you through the politics, right? So for me, as a Boricua, I just have like every Saturday memory and Sunday of my father playing music that spoke to who we were and going to Puerto Rico and having an understanding of who I was as a Puerto Rican, but not knowing all the history that was hidden. And I think probably hidden from mad Puerto Ricans. I didn't know that 1/3 of the women in Puerto Rico have been sterilized. I didn't know that Johnson & Johnson experimented on Puerto Rican women for birth control. I didn't know that in the late 80s, the same doctor who started the sterilization program, which obviously particularly targeted what they call the Jíbaro or the Puerto Rican, the Negro Puerto Rican. They weren't sterilizing white Puerto Rican women. They were sterilizing what they call the Jíbaro or the Negro Puerto Rican woman, or that's who they were sterilized. They weren't even telling them. That same doctor then gets brought to Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx to sterilize thousands and thousands of more women, African American and Puerto Rican women. Then at the same time, the Bronx, you either as a Puerto Rican were coming to New York City or Chicago, living in East Harlem, Spanish Harlem, or the Bronx, right? And what did our parents have to go through? They had to go around and see signs that said no Puerto Ricans allowed. They were in Puerto Rico Americanized, where they had to learn English. They had to stand up to the American national anthem. For 15 years, the Puerto Rican flag couldn't be flown. Independistas were captured, assassinated. The Ponce massacre, the Lolita Lebron, Rafael Cansar Miranda, the FLN, Los Machateros, the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican independence movement. You know, all of this is part of our resistance as people in Puerto Rico that have been colonized. And now we've been dealing with promesa, continue to be a colony. If you're in Puerto Rico, you're an American citizen, but you can't vote. If Puerto Rico were to be a state, which is never going to be a state, it doesn't matter how many white elite Puerto Ricans think we're ever going to be a state, or the people will ever vote for that are crazy. You couldn't fly the Puerto Rican flag. You couldn't say you believed in the Independista movement. Okay, like when J. Edgar Hoover created COINTELPRO, and he said that the Black Panther Party was the largest national security threat in the United States of America, the second group named after that were Puerto Rican Independistas. When 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, the FBI had to admit that it was seeing people in Black Lives Matter, the leaders in people in Black Lives Matter, not only as a threat, but were surveilling them. The second group they were surveilling the most were the students at the University of Puerto Rico, who had been striking for years on May Day, but also around the economic condition on the islands and the continuing corruption, you know? So here we are in 2020, and people are fed up. And it's not just George Floyd. People have been fed up with names. My daughter could name names for hours of people that have been killed by the police that are Black and brown. But in this current moment around police killings, there's been George Floyd was the catalyst at that moment, because also then we began to hear about Ahmaud Arbery. But George Floyd was the catalyst because people saw a modern day lynching. They not only saw what was happening to George Floyd, they were also listening to people on the side of the street being like, please stop, you're killing him, you're killing him. The narrative up until yesterday was that we heard George Floyd say, I can't breathe, 9 times. The transcripts that just came out that I spent last night reading, 82 pages. George Floyd from the beginning told him, I'm claustrophobic, don't put me in the car, I'll lay down on the ground. He said, I can't breathe 20 times. And not only did he call out for his mother the last time, the transcripts say he started saying, I know I'm going to die. You're killing me. Tell my mother, who had already passed away years ago, I love her. Tell my family, I love them. Tell my people, I love them. Tell my daughter, I love her. So now we got 82 pages of transcripts of everything we still haven't seen, right? And now here are young people risking their lives, literally risking their lives. Protesters have been shot. Protesters have been run over. Nobody's talking about the protesters that are being killed in camps and in Occupy and on in what they said call Occupy spaces and on highways. And that doesn't even make the New York Times until there's so much outrage that people like, you have to talk about this woman that was literally run over 4 days ago in Seattle. And I'm actually going to talk about that case more, right? So what does all this have to do with Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans? And how does this connect to Lin-Manuel and Hamilton, right? There is no movement where Puerto Ricans, African Americans have not been in struggle. No matter this real false narrative that a lot of people are putting out there, because it makes like a really good soundbite about how apparently Latino, Latina, Latinx people, Afro descendant people from the Caribbean, the Spanish speaking Caribbean, those of us colonized by Spain and Portugal, we're not the most anti Black people in the country. The world is anti Black. The world became anti Black when it wiped out Indigenous people, killed Indigenous communities, took their lands, and then enslaved Africans. But when we talk about enslaved Africans, what we don't talk about is that these people were a commodity. That's what's called racial capitalism. The capitalism in this country has been built off the bodies that are viewed as a commodity. That's why white people who owned Africans got insurance. That's why when Africans were escaping, whether they were escaping in the United States, in Jamaica, or in Puerto Rico, in Cuba, in Panama, in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, there were bounties put on them to capture them and bring them back to a plantation. With all that, we've always been resisting. If not, we wouldn't be here. And we've always been resisting globally. And when we talk about Puerto Rico, we have to talk about globalism and internationalism and stop this whole conversation here right now about just particularly American exceptionalism. Like, what we're going through is horrific, and it's nothing compared what brothers and sisters are going through in Brazil, where there could be over 100 shootings of Black people in a week because of the Brazilian military. Nigerians are standing up because of police brutality. Aboriginal people are standing up. Puerto Rico has the most corrupt and brutal police department in the Caribbean. If it was a state, we would be the poorest state, and we would be the state with the most corruption, as well as the most police killing our people, brutalizing our people, killing women, disappearing women, and then encapsulating African descendant communities like Louisa. And basically, people in Louisa stay in Louisa because they know they're not going to be safe anywhere else, especially in San Juan and places that's what people think Puerto Ricans are, super light skinned, super white. And, like, we're this multiracial, rainbow people, and there's no racism. Well, it took Bad Bunny 3 years to say Black Lives Matter too. It took Lin-Manuel 6 years to say it. So that's the connections we need to be making. And it's a lot. And it requires us to be using this time that we have now to read. As people may be like, well, I could just Google anything. There's nothing. Googling something is not a comparison to reading a book. Reading Oscar Lopez Rivera's story about his almost 40 years as a political prisoner, you're not going to get the same from Googling that. That's Oscar telling him story. Reading War Against Puerto Ricans by Nelson Dennis. This talks about everything the United States has done to us and why it keeps us as a colony and why we are some of the most persecuted and assassinated group of people. You can read Johanna Fernandez's new book on the Young Lords. The Young Lords, just like the Black Panther Party, but this is the first comprehensive book we really have, and it just came out a couple years ago. So there's resources out there. It comes a moment in time where you have to decide what side are you on. And you have to ask yourself, why are y'all riding so hard for one person? Why are y'all riding so hard for a play that made $1 billion? How much money has been given to Puerto Rican organizations? And I'm not talking about Puerto Rican mainstream organizations or most of the whack ass Puerto Rican politicians in office all over this country, including Congresswoman Nidia Velasquez, who supported Promesa, including Congressman Jose Serrano, who I know has been sick, hasn't been seen, who also advocated for Promesa, including Ruben Diaz Sr., the most homophobic, transphobic, Afro Puerto Rican. I don't even know how he's still in office, including his son, youngest New York State Assemblyman ever elected, known as a hip hop assemblyman. Look at what he's done to the Bronx. He's allowed gentrifiers to come in and all that. Meanwhile, he's waving the Puerto Rican flag. Right now, all we really have is AOC. We used to have Representative Luis Gutierrez, but he left Congress and is back in Puerto Rico doing work. And even AOC can't be like the only voice for Puerto Rico. So what is it, this obsession right now that people are having with Hamilton and Lin-Manuel? And I think part of it is that we hardly ever get to see Puerto Ricans so-called be visible and accepted. And Barack Obama loved to play, and Oprah loved to play, and Disney gave you $75 million for the rights. But what was the play about? Who was Hamilton? Of course, it could be fictionalized, but if it's fictionalized, then don't use it don't bring that shit into politics. If Hamilton, the play, is a fictional play, then leave it where it belongs, in the fiction section of or cultural. Don't bring that up as a historical fact. Don't tell me that at least it was all people of color. You know what? There's mad black and brown, black and Latino, black and Mexican, black and Puerto Rican, Guatemalans, black, Asian, Muslim cops who are worse than white cops. So because 50 black people of color were in a play, that's what we're celebrating? I just showed you Rebel Diaz. I could tell you mad hip hop groups just in New York. Or let's just talk about Puerto Ricans creating hip hop culture. And that's what we're like, yo, why are you hating on the 50 people on the play? I'm not hating on the 50 people on the play. You had a job to do a job, you know? But what the hell? Like, it's just getting ridiculous. Somebody wanted me to bring up the book, so it's the Young Lords. And it was War Against All Puerto Ricans. I have a lot more. If you look through my Instagram, you could post. So I would encourage people right now to say, I'll be real honest. My daughter has watched the play 3 times. All right. So all I've heard for the last 2 days is my shot, the battle, and artistically, I see why people could rock with it. Choreographically, I could see why people could rock with that. I get it. It's like my parents' generation who kind of rocked with West Side Story, right? Until then, you hear the lyrics in West Side Story where Rita Moreno says, I want to be an American. I'm so glad I left Puerto Rico. I hope it just sinks back in the ocean. It was one of to this day, the West Side Story is viewed as one of the most racist cultural plays and movies against Puerto Ricans. If you read academically what people were saying about Puerto Ricans in the 70s, that we were dirty, we were lazy, all we did was stab people, all we did was drugs, the women, all they did was get pregnant and needed to be on welfare. For over 30 years, that movie actually allowed bad anthropologists and sociologists and more right-wing academics create an entire narrative of who we are as Puerto Ricans. And that narrative has carried over until very, very recently, right? And like I said at the beginning, Steven Spielberg has already filmed West Side Story. Rita Moreno is in it. How in 2020 did Steven Spielberg or Mel Gibson's new movie about him being stuck in Puerto Rico during the hurricane, and supporting some police officer that killed some people, some Puerto Ricans in the hurricane? That movie just came out 2 weeks ago. We got West Side Story. Obviously, Hamilton has nothing to do with Puerto Rico. We're talking about a Puerto Rican and other people of color that play them, and that's where I'm going to end. So if you read this article, it's called Hamilton the Musical, Black Actors Dress Up Like Slave Traders, and It's Not Halloween. And it's by Ishmael Reed. And he is one of the greatest cultural critics and playwriters in our time. And you probably have not heard of Ishmael Reed for a very same reason that Hamilton will get on Disney Plus, but you for sure won't ever see a movie about the young lords get on Disney Plus. He writes, establishment historians write bestsellers when some of the cruel actions of the founding fathers are smudged over, if not ignored altogether. They're guilty of a cover up. This is the case with Alexander Hamilton, whose life has been scrubbed with a kind of historical Ajax until it sparkles. His reputation has been shored up as an abolitionist and someone who was opposed to slavery. This is historically inaccurate and not true. Alexander Hamilton married into the Schuylers, a slave-holding family, and participated in the bartering of slaves. One of Hamilton's actors, Renee Els Goldsberry, who visited the Schuyler home, said, the Schuyler sisters were the Kardashians of 1780. Superstars, but with dignity and grace, because they had 27 slaves that served them every day. Black women whose labor assignments left them to preen. Is this actor disregarding similar callously that the sisters thrived on the labor of enslaved women? No, she probably attended the same schools that I attended, a curriculum that endowed slave traders and native exterminators with the statue of deities, including current Confederate statues. Like other founding fathers, Hamilton found slavery an evil, yet was a slave trader. The creepy Thomas Jefferson, who appears in Hamilton, was even a bigger hypocrite and is blaming King George for the slave trade, a contention that was deleted from the final version of the Declaration of Independence. Professor Michelle Duras of the University of Albany, big up, I went to SUNY Albany, so I know Professor Duras, is much more direct and shows what happens when someone from a class whose voice has been neglected invades the all-white male country club of historians. She takes to task the Hamilton biographies written by his all-star groupies, including Ron Chernow, where it's that book that Lin-Manuel wrote, which inspired him to make the play. Alexander Hamilton's biographers praise Hamilton for being an abolitionist, but they have overstated Hamilton's stance on slavery. Historian John Miller insisted he advocated one of the most daring invasions of property rights that was never made, the abolition of Negro slavery. She writes, Hamilton's position on slavery is more complex than his biographer suggests. Some historians maintain that Hamilton's birth on the island of Nevis and his subsequent upbringing in St. Croix instilled in him a hatred for the brutalities of slavery. And that's something that people have to understand too. The slavery that was in the United States was not only the most brutal, it was in perpetuity, which meant that your children were also born into slavery. Okay, right? They use the word benign slavery when they talk about the Caribbean nations, because the Caribbeans that had enslaved Africans on every island, including Puerto Rico, weren't as brutal, and that slaves would not, your children would not sometimes be born into perpetuity. And there was also something called manumission, where slaves, actually enslaved people, bought themselves out of slavery. And that also happened in the United States. But there was a brutality to the in slavery in the United States that was not the same type of brutality, and that's what she's saying about. So the article goes on, and you can find it. It's again called Hamilton the Musical. It was written in 2015 by Ishmael Reed. And then let me just read the end of this. Slave trading usually involves sex trafficking, where the planners turn the plantations into enforced and involuntary harems, an enterprise that fugitive slave writer William Wells Brown found disgusting. George Washington's Sally Hemings, according to the Black oral tradition, was a slave named Venus. 50% of the slaves at Arlington, where Robert E. lived, were the granddaughter of Martha Washington, were, quote, biracial. Already the same 1% critics who drooled over Bloody Andrew about Andrew Jackson, the Eichmann of American Native American policy, are already embracing Hamilton. They must be as ignorant as the Black and Latino actors who have lent their talents to Hamilton. Maybe that's why the establishment critics leave out the slave parts. The idea that Black Lives Matter is an improvement over their slavery status, where Blacks were treated as objects to be bought and sold, worked, beaten, killed, and in his words, fucked. Though ignorant, hateful people say that the Civil War was fought to uphold states' rights, the slaveholders of the South, who kept Africans against their will as a result of their free labor, were the richest white people in the world. And why would President Obama lend his prestige to this thing? First, he welcomes Black pathology pimp David Simon to the White House, where he endorsed The Wire, a show in which Black children are singled out as degenerate drug peddlers when all of the heroin seems to be stashed in Vermont and other states with few Blacks among their population. He honors this hustler even after Professor Carl Alexander, who did an actual study of Simon's Black Baltimore neighborhoods, found Simon's presentation to be one-sided, as he put it politely. And then he ends by saying, and here's the final insult. The Gilda Learman Institute of American History is now working with producers on an effort to make it possible for large numbers of New York City school children to see the show. This is the best argument I know for the establishment of more Afrocentric, Latino-centric schools in order to now balance the curriculum that's going to be Eurocentric and which perpetrates genocide and slaveholders and are now honored. Were these the brainwashing schools attended by the Latino and Black actors and those before who are performing in this thing? And I think that's the most important part, that there have been millions of people that have seen Hamilton, and there have been millions of school students all over who have seen it. And now, obviously, on Disney Plus, I'm sure there's billions of people who've seen it. So the same indoctrination I got when I was going to a very good public school, where I literally, all I learned about was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I didn't even ever read one Black book in my school, you know? And it wasn't until college that I was like, I don't know anything about Black people, Latino people, Asian people, Native people, poor people that I haven't seen on TV, right? And it's no wonder that when my generation, first generation college students, had to go through so much mental anguish on predominantly white campuses because we weren't only going for ourselves, we were going as being first generation, and a lot of us felt pressure to make sure we didn't mess up, and we did everything right, and we didn't get in trouble, and we were quiet because going to college gave you a good job. But the one thing about going to college in the 90s was we had real hip hop, real different hip hop. It wasn't all political hip hop. It was fun, it was political, it was transphobic and homophobic and patriarchal. And unfortunately, 30 years later, do we really have hip hop culture? Like, does that even exist? I don't know. Maybe I'm just old now. But I know that for me, once I began to know the truth of my people, and I began to see my people as not just being oppressed, but always resisting, I began to understand that our history did not start with colonization. I began to understand that there have been Native and Indigenous people all over this world, that it was Indigenous people and what we now call Polynesian, Asian Pacific Islander people that guided slave traders boats who were lost. It was in Hawaii where Puerto Ricans got some type of safe haven. It was Filipinos who've been having everybody's backs. It's been Haiti and Dominican people who have a history of solidarity, even though their leaders and dictators have tried to and have successfully pinned them against each other. That Africa wasn't backwards, that knowing Spanish wasn't a detriment. All of that happened for me in college. All of it. Because I think at one point our generation of parents were just like, we're working hard. We're going to give you everything you need. You're going to have a better life. Just do what you got to do. Have your retirement, your paycheck, get your house. Don't start trouble. Don't say anything. But we don't come from those type of people. So I hope that if Lin-Manuel Miranda wants to restore some of the harm he has caused, that he starts by apologizing for supporting Promesa. That you watch his video where he says he had a moral failing and he had not said Black Lives Matter. That he apologized to the University of Puerto Rican students when he was there talking about the play, where they not only asked him not to bring Hamilton to Puerto Rico, but they protested him and were removed by campus police. That he apologized for bringing the play there and charging thousands of dollars, where the median income of a family in Puerto Rico is $21,000, right? That he used now the $1 billion and more that he has made to now open up a fund for playwriters to make these plays. And that he considered his deal with Nespresso and George Clooney, which is affecting coffee growers in Puerto Rico, because we don't need Nespresso or George Clooney to have farms in Puerto Rico to grow coffee when we have farmers in Puerto Rico that literally need to be saved. So we have those resources. We don't need to be importing our food. We can grow everything in Puerto Rico. That he support renewable energy, that he supports organizations like the Feminist Collective, arts organizations, Gopi, Corridor Afro, that he goes and opens up a museum for Sam Lin and Louisa and talk about slavery in Puerto Rico and do something for Afro descendants in that. You could do that. In fact, he probably don't even have to spend any of his money, y'all. All he has to do is ask a lot of people, a lot of rich white people that love love him and his play. And lastly, he can be on the right side when we start also starting this petition to make sure that West Side Story is not aired. There's no reason for that movie to be aired, and we need to stop it. And if you don't think these campaigns work, you could look back in the 70s and see what happened when in the 70s Paul Newman made that movie about the Bronx. Why can't I remember the name of it? It was the most awful, awful movie about the Bronx where it made us look like Puerto Ricans like savages. And if you look back at the campaign that Richie Perez started, there's a reason Paul Newman was shamed for making that movie about our people, right? So if you go with one thing, Lynn, go to you know, some of our most brilliant documentarians right now, right? Talk to some Puerto Ricans, the ones that you like and you want to work with, and start a program for playwrights, Puerto Rican playwrights. And these are the plays that they can write. They could write a play about Lolita Lebron and Dilcia Pagan, Oscar Lopez Rivera, Luis Rosa, Albizu Campos, Filiberto, Los Machateros, Iris Morales, Denise Oliver, Richie Perez, La Bruja, Mariposa, Taina Acele, Esperanza Maitel, Maita Moreno Vega, the Young Lords, the FLN, Chacha Jimenez, Vicente Panama Alba, Tito Kayak, Mickey Morales, the Young Lords. There's a lot of plays that could be made that will actually empower generations and generations of Puerto Ricans that could actually finally kill this ay bendito attitude that Puerto Ricans have, that we always accept anything that our oppressors want to give us because we don't believe we deserve more than that. That we are just happy, right, to be alive. And that is a blessing. But this idea of Puerto Ricans now for over 125 years almost having to survive, well, longer than that, but having to survive the United States and everything is done to us. And in 2020, we're like, well, at least some Puerto Ricans got up in a play. At least it was a Puerto Rican who wrote the play. If that's what we're asking for, we're like 300 years behind, y'all. And so check out Abajo Hamilton. We're gonna do something probably next week with a bunch of us who are hoping that more and more people sign the petition. You could find it at Presente, which has been the only national organization that has backed us up, even though we ask many organizations that are supporting the statues coming down, as they should be, of Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson and all these Confederate, statues. Why wouldn't you want the Hamilton statue to come down? Because there was a play that she went to, and then there was an after party afterwards where you could hang out with a lot of famous people and get your groove on, because you like the fact that there were mad people of color in it. We're beyond that right now. The struggle right now is racial capitalism. The struggle right now is this type of propaganda that is going to allow our people to think and young people to believe that this dude had nothing to do with the trafficking of Black bodies. So don't wave the Puerto Rican flag. Don't go to the parade. Don't show your tats. Don't say, yo soy Boricua till the day I die. Don't say Black Lives Matter and then be posting some crazy shit with people who are on the right side of history, because you're not on the right side of history. Or, one of the best lines of the play for me is history has his eyes on you. Well, history has his eyes on us. So I know it was long. I said I was going to rant because now I'm going to get to the next level with my comrades in the campaign. And I'm getting ready for the show tonight with Dr. Ball, where we'll talk about this too. But I also, oh, you know what, Lola Gracia, it's not Nespresso, it's Nescafe. Um, right. So what we're saying is that there's a collaboration that he has done with George Clooney and Nescafe. Rather than support the local coffee farmers, they want to like create new farms or do some thing to import coffee into Puerto Rico, which is like importing mangoes into Puerto Rico or the sun. Like, what the hell are y'all doing? But yeah, so we're gonna, like I said, I'll be back on at 7. And I really wanted just again to tell all the young folks and other folks that are becoming politicized that have reached out to me the last couple of days, like, yo, people are awful, people are mean, people are cruel, people are threatening you, people are saying shit about you. I come out of the movement, all right? I didn't grow up in the movement, but the movement I come out of now, and the movement has raised my daughter. Every time I think about that, this is what I want y'all to know. Those of you that are struggling right now, especially mentally, like, yo, if I put myself out there, what does that mean for me? What are the consequences? There's always consequences to any action that you take. And the stuff that I'm doing right now, compared to my ancestors and my elders, is not a sacrifice, right? I'm just straight up speaking the truth. You know, things happen, opportunities don't happen. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. My integrity means everything to me because I know as a historian what our ancestors have done. And they never gave up. They never gave up. They gave up on America, but they never gave up on Black people. Like, Puerto Rican revolutionaries had given up on Commonwealth status. They never gave up on independence, and they never gave up in knowing that it takes one thing to shift the consciousness of someone. So do not let comments or even people in your family or your people that you're like, yo, I can't political roll with you. Do not let that be your guiding politic. Yesterday, when I was talking to Dr. West, one of the first questions I asked him was, how don't you get up every day and you're not sad? And he said, no, sister, every day I get up, I'm sad and I cry. I'm a blues man. But we have to fortify, and part of that fortification is not only your physical and like wearing your mask, right? Like the Borinqueña one, right? Or see, because this is why we rep our flag, because they tried to take it away from us. It's fortifying yourself mentally, and part of that fortification is decolonizing your mind. Part of decolonizing is reading books, is hearing oral histories, is maybe asking your abuela and abuela questions now that we need to be asking. Like, I got mad questions from my parents next time I see them about a lot of things, because I haven't done a good job of doing that oral history with my family and what it means. But a couple years ago, my cousin who works where my abuelo and abuela raised their family, my mom's side of the family in Youngstown, Ohio, sent me a picture. And it was my abuelo in the 1950s. He was in Youngstown. He worked in steel mills with other Puerto Rican men, and they were holding up signs that said in Spanish that they wanted a Sunday mass, another mass, to be in Spanish, because when they were going to church, it was on English. And he's there protesting. And I never saw that picture till I think it was 3 years ago. And I was like, yo, this is where I get it from. I didn't know that about my abuelo, but it was in the historical archives, which made me even want to go in on history even more, because I've always loved history, because it's either the fact or it's not the fact, So to all of you, y'all just got to keep pushing. That's all we can do. Just keep pushing, man. Young people are pushing, older people are pushing. These forces are no joke. We need to prepare for a lot of things. But once you know who you are and your identity and that pride, those comments don't mean a damn thing. Those people making them comments are colonized people. The hope is that one day they will be conscious of not being conscious, right? So thank you. I know like I said, it was going to be a rant. I'm gonna see y'all in a couple of hours, and keep checking out the show. And periodically, this is what I'll do. And please, again, go to Somos Presente and sign our petition and check out for the next steps we're gonna take in this campaign. And if you know Lin and he wants to have a conversation, let's do that, right? Like, the things about politics is, for me, I don't compromise on politics. Because I'm not a politician, but I'm always willing to have a conversation. What I'm willing not to do is compromise or deal with ignorant statements or people's craziness that they think the more they hate on me, the more I'm going to stop. And it's real patriarchal anyway. And it's even women who are colonized with patriarchy who are making some of the worst comments. But, it is what it is. So this is what we do. I'll see y'all in about less than 2 hours for the show tonight. Peace, everybody. And you can send me any questions. You could directly message me. I'm going to try to get to answer questions around this because, as you can see, I'm very passionate about it. So I hope y'all can join. If not, you can always watch our show after it airs. It's always archived on YouTube, and I'll put this up on my IGTV. See you in a minute. Hope everybody's safe and healthy. Peace.